All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank you all for attending our SAP Lumira webinar for Visual Crossing 4. And my name is Sean McCafferty. I'm in charge of business development for Visual Crossing. And we're going to spend about 5 minutes going through slides, and the rest will be a live demo inside of Lumira. And hopefully we can hold all our questions until the end. We're going to be recording this, and we'll be posting it to our YouTube channel and other video locations. So we will, at the very end, take as many questions as you guys have, and we're welcome to stay around long after the webinar ends if we happen to run over. So feel free to stick by us, and we'll make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. The Visual Crossing was founded by BI engineers to create the ideal map solution for BI users. We've been working in the BI space since 2003, and there's a lot that goes into making a map solution that works well with just BI, and that's a big differentiator for us from what you typically see with other solutions that are kind of loosely connected to other vendors like Esri and a few others. That, you know, it's more like passing data sets back and forth, and we take a more holistic approach in understanding the data sets, as well as understanding the features and the functionality, as well as the skill set of the users that are utilizing our product. And those are mostly business people, not GIS people. So we consider ourselves the go-to platform for solutions when the other plug-in type solutions don't really do enough for people. And so a couple of examples we have here on the PowerPoint, location analytics. More often than not, most of the plugins that you're going to see or the extensions for Lumira are going to just show you a visual representation of a map. And they don't really allow you to do true analytics on it and to understand about your locations and maybe about your customer locations and all of the various things that you want to analyze geographically. They just simply show you a picture, and they let you pull from it what you'd like. We try to go to the next step and provide you the tools to actually do that. Ease of use. Visual Crossing 4 was entirely redesigned. We still keep all the great map functionality that we've had in the past, the advanced functionality for the analysts, but we also have made the interface simpler for end users. Whether they're just touching a touchpad and they don't have a lot of access, or they might be somebody who wants to drill down and find more information. It should be as easy as possible, trying to minimize the number of clicks per action. Another big differentiator is the performance, as well as the scalability. What we find very, very often is that with some of the plugins, is simply adding in multi-states worth of postal codes are enough to break the system, or they don't render fast enough. And with different versions of the products, you can see a dramatic enhancement of performance and scalability. And we'll discuss a little bit about what those are. Another big differentiator is region creation. I'll go into a little more detail in the demo, but what we subscribe to the data style region creation primarily, whether it's on the fly or it's done ahead of time through a tool. We basically want BI users to create their regions in a BI lookup table effectively, or provide it to us on the data set and let us do the joining. You don't have to open up GIS tools and go through complex processes or be a cartographer to create custom regions. And we provide many different options here, and most of them are automated, and they're based on your data. So you don't really have to worry about being an expert here, but you still will get custom regions, and we'll show you an example in the demo. And then we get into a lot of other things with very advanced customers who have more complicated schemas. Sometimes they have, you want to show multiple regions differentiated on each product, not necessarily one region for the entire corporation. And so those can be complex, and your system has to support it. And that's where we're born out of, dealing with some of these harder cases. And so now we're bringing some of that functionality to the to the more simple use cases as well, and some of the simpler platforms. And finally, is just, we try to be as tightly integrated into all of the BI solutions we can. We're not just a bolt-on. We try to do it very much at the lowest possible level and create an environment that people can get a lot of value from. All right, so the three I mentioned, again, I'll go into a little bit more detail on performance and scalability. In our standard mapping solution, we expect users to render, in terms of polygons, an entire, for instance, for U.S. people, an entire postal code layer, which is about 30 to 40,000 postal code complex polygons, and render that in just a few seconds, and be able to handle that many. And at the same time, load on hundreds of thousands of points on it, and load on multiple layers, and really be able to explore your entire enterprise without having to jump through hoops or add filters or minimize your data sets in some way. But we want you to be able to pass to us fairly large data sets and be able to do all of this analysis. We talked a little bit about region creation, and the last thing we'll mention here is that what you'll find is that you're getting a single solution. The way our product was architected, all of the APIs are the same across mobile, web, and any kind of desktop version that you'll see. It's all one unified API, so your maps, if you have heterogeneous user types in your environment, and you have a lot of people on mobile and you have a lot of people on web, and they all get the same functionality, they all get the same interface, and you can obviously vary that, but there's no limits to what they can do. And so that's another big differentiator for visual crossing. All right, so just to give you a point of understanding, we've had over the last 10 years or so, we've had a map server-based product, and it was a fairly strong server that sit on a J2E environment, and it would provide people with great mapping functionality. But what we found is that there's a lot of customers out there, like for instance what we're demoing here today, which is Lumira Desktop. There's people who want to go offline. There's people who are not connected, or they might be only team server connected, who want to have the solution embedded into their application right there. And you want to be able to do that and not limit functionality. And so what we've done is we've condensed down 10 years of map server technology into a single plugin that you can drop in. It's an extension in Lumira. Just go into Lumira, into the extensions folder, and add it manually, and then you'll be able to do exactly what we're showing you here today. The geometries are all embedded, so you have your postal codes, your states or provinces, your countries, anything of that nature is all embedded into the plugin as well, and it allows you to just get started instantly there. And you notice one little side bubble here is showing on optional web server. Just because you chose to go on the desktop and use the plugin or extension directly, you wouldn't be limited in how you can connect to our server still. So if there is information out there and you want to pull from other sources of data, that's entirely up to you. You can set up a team server or use our cloud. It's entirely up to you, so you can have best of both worlds in that mode. And then, of course, there's the cloud server version, which is effectively where you're connecting with the plugin to do a couple different things. You can store all of your metadata up in the cloud, and you can also utilize the vector tiling cache, which is a tile cache that's shared amongst all users. And that'll give you a dramatic performance benefit as well. And we highly recommend it for when you start getting into the team structures or departmental structures and above. And it will give you that high performance, and it will manage all of your metadata and everything for you, so you don't have to worry about local storage at all. The other additional things you can get from there is, because you can hit these larger data sets on the server, you can get additional features such as drive time queries, where an entire address set has to be loaded into server memory that desktops usually can't handle. So there's a couple items like that that you get in benefit, but primarily what we're showing you here today, the embedded server can do 98, 99% of what you can in the connected version. All right, I'm going to switch over here to a live demo, and I'm going to go ahead and open up Lumira. And what we're looking at here, I have an Excel spreadsheet loaded, and just to give you a point of reference, I'm going to open up that spreadsheet, and I'm going to bring it over and show it to you here. And you'll see we have region, stores, all different sorts of dimensions, customer, zip codes, as well as date and transaction IDs, and a couple measures on here. And so this is it's a fairly large set, and we're going to go ahead and we have it loaded in here. And the only thing we did to this project that would be different than you'd get from the system itself is obviously we loaded in this data set, and we also installed in the extensions folder here, we installed the visual processing extension for SAP Lumira. And so we're going to go ahead now and get started with live demo, and I'm going to launch, by double-clicking, I'm going to launch the data set. And you'll see at the left, it imported everything that we have here. And I know in Lumira, you have, obviously the tools to go in and change things if you wish. You want more decimal points or anything like that, you can change the types. But primarily, this is loaded it exactly as we need it. And I'm going to go ahead and show you, this is where the visual processing map extension would show up. But first, I'm going to click over to the grid mode, just so that you can see me build the data set that I'm going to be showing on the map. And we're going to go ahead and add a couple measures here, profit and sales. We're also going to add in here region, and we'll add in zip, and we'll also add in store. And store comes in three forms here, so I'll add the name, latitude, and longitude. And so it looks like I missed my region here, so I'll go ahead and add that back at the top. And there we go. All right. So now Lumira automatically shows you that information. So you have your region, you have your zip, you have your stores, and we have a couple measures, so we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and select to display this as the visual processing map. And immediately what we do is we scan the entire set and show you all of the data that you have on the left here loaded into the map. So what I'll do first is I'll click and open up our main editor here, which is the layer list. And you get to see we have store, region, zip, and then we have our OpenStreetMap layer is loaded behind here in the form of a base map. We support many different styles of base maps from different vendors, including Google, Bing, and some others. And so it's something very simple to do, and you can also set up your own if you should so choose. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off zip codes to make regions a little clearer and just discuss a little bit about how we do this. So we had mentioned that we're a data-driven region tool, and what we have here is a layer that was never defined before. We don't have the shapes for region. You haven't created them yet. You haven't stored them yet. So one mode that you can use visual processing in is to just say, interpret the regions based on the data set. And so the underlying from region and its child is zip. And so it combined all the necessary zip codes into a region and color-coded them. And you'll notice as I mouse over it, you'll also see the label for it. And the label has aggregate values for my measures, profit and sales. But those aren't on my report, aren't on my data set. Now you can turn them on in Lumira and you can utilize those. But inside of visual processing, we also have an aggregation and cross-tabbing engine that understands the hierarchical data set and can create these totals on the fly. And this is very important, as you'll see later when we do more ad hoc analysis, but it has the capability of creating these for you. And out of the box, obviously what it's created for us here is a label, and it's color-coded all of our regions and created those territories for us. So it's now you're ready to go with your region analysis. And in the other modes, if you want to use visual processing, you can make these more persistent and do, maybe not working with just a single state set, and work entire U.S. set or entire all of Europe set, or whatever your case may be here, you can go ahead and do that region creation and store those away so that everybody gets the same regions, not dependent on the local data set any longer. So, but you have multiple options. And then there's another option which we won't be showing here today. We also have the capability of giving you hand-drawn regions. So you can physically annotate on the map what you'd like a region to look like and store that polygon against your dimensions. And so when the elements of your dimensions come back, they have that shape that you stored. So there's three very powerful mechanisms here for creating regions. All of them are easy, and all of them were designed for BI users. You don't have to have any GIS experience to go ahead and do that. All right. I'll turn off region and I'll turn back on zip code layer. Now, you may have noticed that we've already color-coded the points, we've color-coded the polygons, and how does that happen, and how much work is it? Well, it comes out of the box to do this automatically for you every time you load a data set. What it does is it scans the high and the low values and creates an automatic color distribution, and by default it creates 5. What you can see here on the legend is we can see for store, we can see it created using the profit measure. It went ahead and distributed them and color-coded them, and you can see the points at the left. And the same thing for the polygons. You can see the little squares of colors. We call those thematic sequences, and each one is done for every measure. And so, for instance, if I wanted to look at zip code by, say, sales, I could just use the legend as a page by and switch over to sales. And so you can dynamically display any of your measures that you put on this data set. You don't have to go to the left here and drag them on, drag them off. These are already created for you. They're all ready to go. All you have to do is select from the page by and just tell it which measure you would like to show your map by. And for each layer, you can do that as well. We also have that capability to do that there on stores as well as on the postal codes. All right. So now you say, well, okay, what happens if the out of the box isn't working for me? What if I need something more? What if I need to define these in a different way? So we go over to the left here, and I mentioned this is a full functioning GIS capable system. So I'll click on my zip layer, and it'll bring up the editor. And I have some nice features here where you can just choose to display these with or without borders, your choice. You can change the opacity of the layers so that they can shine through in others. But you'll notice here in this section called pages, when the system creates these dynamic pages for you, you can edit them as well. So let's say I wanted the profit to look or display it a little bit differently. I can open up profit, and I can choose a different distribution method. Maybe I want to choose manual and set all the measure levels myself for each color, or I want to use a logarithmic method. The one we have by default is what we call equal numbers. And it's a really nice way to distribute on a map to make sure that you get a good distribution of colors. And so what the map system does is it looks at the entire range, looks at the high and low values, divides it up into 5, and it makes sure that you have an equal number of elements in each of the separate bins. And so that's why you get this nice color distribution. A lot of times when you do, you want to show exceptions, and so maybe you'll go with a logarithmic method, or you'll set manual. To show pops of exceptionalism where something's exceptionally high or exceptionally low. That's an option for you as well, and so you can just change it here. Likewise, if you want to change the entire sequence, you can change any individual color here, or you could pick from the sequence loader. And so maybe I just want a monochromatic sequence here that goes from high to low, and so. It's personal taste here, and depends on what information you're kind of trying to display, but you have the capability to do that. And you can add additional formats here, and you can represent all of them in different ways. At the bottom of the list is that label. When we give you a default pop-up label with all of the information on it, sometimes those are too big, too much information, sometimes you want it arranged differently. If you want to change it, you just click on the text, and it's as simple as saying, I want to show this label as bold. You can also have a pop down here for all of your measures, so you can show any measures you want to show or not show. You can add to the label or delete from the label. And we also have multi-labeling functionality, which you see here. If I mouse over one of the stores, as well as I'm also in a zip code, it will show me both. So you get to see the store, but you get to see which zip it's in, and you can show as many of these labels as you wish on top of your layers. Okay, so the next item I want to show you is a little bit more into the ad hoc analysis range, and I'm going to go ahead here on our layer picker. Right next to it is the selection tool. It's a dotted radius tool. When I open this up, you'll see that I have 4 options at the top here for doing selections, but I also have click functionality. So if I just want to click or control click and select multiple manually, it will select those for me. What I'm going to use for this exercise is I'm going to use the radius tool. I'm going to make sure that I'm selecting from the zip code layer, and you get to change whether it's centroid inclusion or fully enclosed. and other different variations. I'm going to go ahead and drag a radius here of about 26 miles or so. And you notice immediately at the left, it aggregated and said I have 34 postal codes that I selected. And if I look at the information window here, it uses the aggregation engine again to aggregate all the data from the postal codes. So now I see the total worth of that area in terms of value. So if I'm you know, maybe a retailer or anyone else who wants to place a new location, you know, it could be cell towers or anything you're looking to place location of, and you want to understand more about the area, what you can do is you can use this tool and go in there and select a nice area for yourself and understand what you think the potential of it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and select the second one now to show you a little bit more about our functionality. And I'm going to make the same radius selection here. You notice this one has 38 postal codes versus 34. This time my information window is going to aggregate from both of the selections. So now I get to see a total for both. And you notice it shows that I have 72 items here, and it's aggregated my profit and my sales for me. Now if I want to see them side by side so I can compare the two, then I just select the comparison icon. And the comparison icon is really nice for showing me how these two different selections weigh against each other. And so again, it uses all of the measures that you put on the data set initially, and it does the aggregation for you, and it shows you the comparison. A couple other functions up here I won't show, but you can take any of these selections and you can promote it to a separate layer so you can share it and show it to other users. So as you're creating these territories, if you think one has value and you want to share it, you can certainly do that as well. All right. I'm going to clear out of here and I'll show you two more. One is our polygon or our lasso tool. Sometimes you want to create a more you know, oddly shaped territory of an area that you want to select, and this tool allows you to do that. You can just lasso any area, and also it comes, all of our selections have the vertices points here, so if you need to extend in any particular direction, you can go ahead and, you know, change that format to make it exactly the way it's supposed to look. And the last one I'll show you is the line buffer tool. And so we find a lot of use cases in insurance companies, but also in anybody who evaluates maybe storms or road level access and distance from those. And so what I've done is I've selected the line tool, and now I'm going to draw a line. Maybe it's simulating a storm coming through or a road, but I draw the line, and as I drag away from the line, it gives me my buffer, and it gives me the mileage. So I'm going to choose a 12-mile buffer here. And now it's going to make a selection of all those postal codes again, aggregate the data, it's going to aggregate all of the measures, and it gives me a value as to perhaps what is my risk in this area? What's going to happen when this storm comes through? And you know, how can I protect against it ultimately? One other nice feature of all of the selections is that they're, you know, as you need to adjust, so maybe the storm is going a little bit further to the east, and we can just drag it over, it re-aggregates and gives you that functionality. And so you can put multiple of them up there and compare them side by side. If it goes 5 miles east or 5 miles west, what's the difference? What does this mean to us? How do we have to react? Okay, so that's the selection functionality. And what we're going to show next is we put our points into two different categories effectively. I'm going to turn off zips and you can see just the store points. So there's the stores, which are typically a lower cardinality of set versus, say, the customers that go to them. And so there's different visualizations that help with each of those. And so I'm going to show you how the points are formatted here, particularly for stores. So I'll click on store. Again, it opens up my editor. And you notice everything is just right there in front of me. How do I want to see this map? Right now I have points selected, so I can go in and show you how points work. Maybe I want the, you know, a little bit bolder style. Maybe I think this is too graduated on my metric, and so I'm going to make the size a little bit smaller in graduation. And so you have a lot of control functionality over exactly how the points are done and how they're distributed across the thematic sequences by size. And so you can get color coding and sizing in the same view, which gives you kind of a multivariant approach to doing your analysis. Large profits, you know, but if they show up in orange, they have lower overall cost. So There's a lot of different things you can do with this and different approaches. One of the other ones I'm going to show you here on the store layer is what we call our partitions or our Voronoi diagrams. And what this does is the midpoint-based polygon algorithm that shows you what the natural geographic territory of each of these locations are. So I'll just click on it. And right now it's set to a max of 25 miles, and I'm going to increase that to 250 so it does full. And I'm also going to show my points for my stores back again. So, all right. So let's take a look at what we're seeing here. You'll notice that as I zoom down into these areas, everything is midpoint based. So these lines are drawn directly in between each of the store locations to show what their natural territory is. So the thought being that this is your expected area of gravity, where you basically pull anybody who falls into that region should, if all other things being equal, other than geography, distance, should go to that location. And so this is a way of showing a rough approximation of exactly what those areas should be, not necessarily what they are, but it's a good comparison to the actual, which we'll show you in a few minutes here. But this is a good way of showing your entire layout of your enterprise and what your expectations are for the entities in it, and what kind of area coverage do I get. All right, so I'm going to go back over to store, and this time I'm going to just show it as points again. So I just click on the point, and you'll see that I get my points back. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back to the grid here just so again we can see the data set. You can also add this live to the map, but I like to, for the demo purposes, I like to go back here. And what I'm going to do is just add in customer last name, customer latitude, and customer longitude. And so now you'll see that Lumira updates and gives me everything I need here, and everything is nicely formatted from top to bottom: region, zip, store, and then now customer. So I'm going to switch back to our map here. And now we have 2 point sets and multiple polygon sets as well. So this is something that, again, with the layering functionality, you can choose to show these and display these how you wish. But it will show you a lot of different layers with a lot of different data on it all at once. And you notice with the customers on it, it's a much larger data set. So it'll take us a second or two here to get the data from Lumira. And here's our data set again. All right. So now what we're going to be looking at here in the layer picker is all of our customer transaction points, our zip codes, our regions again, and for clarity purposes, I'll turn off regions and I'll turn off zip codes. And now what we get to see is effectively the store and customer relationship. And so I'll zoom down back into a territory again here. And what I'm going to show you now is our location information tool. And so now location information tool is an analytical tool that allows you to show how a particular location is performing. It could be based off of data that's underlying it, that it captures, or it could be hierarchical data coming from the grid. But I'll show you an example of a store-customer relationship here. And so it queries me initially about store and customer relationship, and then it asks me to pick a point. And so I'll pick this point, the Easton Town Center, and I'll click OK. And you'll notice that right away what it draws for me is an 80% rectangle, or 80% polygon, of that store location and where its customers are coming from. So now before we showed you on Voronoi where they were expected to come from, and now we can tell you where they actually come from. And if you want to add a Voronoi polygon on here for that particular location, I'll just go ahead and add one here. And you'll see that this location was only expected to perform in this small sliver based on where the other store locations are. But in actuality, it's outperforming the entire area. And so this gives a point of investigation for people who are running this business to understand why, what's wrong with the other locations, what's wrong with the different, the capabilities of that location. And so I'll go ahead and delete Voronoi, and I'll just show you for comparison's sake. You can go ahead and add another one. And let's say I'm going to add one in the center here. I'm going to add the Polaris fashion. Let me pick one a little bit differently here, so it's a little bit further away. And I'll go ahead and click this from the other area, and we'll click this select. And now I get to see two side by side, and you can add as many of these as you want to see what the actual. A lot of times you'll see overlap because they do. You get customers overlapping from each area, but also you get to get to see exactly where your clients and your performance of that location is coming from. All right. So there's lots of different things you can do with this tool. If you're hooked up to a drive time server, you can show drive time polygons rather than just regular polygons. You can show just a radius around it if you want just a little more broad brush stroke. Or again, you could do the actual. So let me go ahead and clear this out. And you'll notice that it also adds a new layer to the map, so you can save this for analysis. I'm going to go ahead and remove it just for clarity's sake, but if you wanted to ever share that analysis with somebody, again, you can leave it up as an individual layer. All right. A couple different items here that I'm going to show you. One is the representation, again, of the hierarchical data set and how they relate to each other. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually add a new type of layer. And you'll see with visual crossing, you get to add layers from the data set that you're working with. You get to add it from outside external geometries that you load in. You pick from your base maps. And then there's this other category where you get to add things like annotation layers. And the one I'm going to choose is what we call our combined layer. It's when you have a layer that's built up from multiple dimensions. And so you have this different set of data, and it's store and customer last name is a parent relationship, which is what I want. It read it correctly and understood it. And when I click OK, it basically is going to create a new layer called store and customer last name here, and it's going to draw it as such. It's going to draw the connections between them. And so a spider diagram is a good way to show the relationship of where all of the store customer relationships are coming from. And if that gets too messy, you can always add in a filter here and just say, I'd like to filter on a particular store. And let's see, we're looking at the Ohio Valley Mall, and I just want to add the store. And this is another powerful feature of the visual crossing product, is if you need to be able to create a different, an isolated view and really understand a section without having to modify your data set, you could just come in here and create filters dynamically. And so now I've filtered it to just a single set, and I can also go in and do modify the point set here. And I'm going to make the line a little bit thicker just so you can see it visually, because it may be hard to see over the connection here. So I'm going to go ahead and make that line thickness 3. And so you see what we get here is now we know exactly for this store location where are all the customers coming from that visit this location. But this is nice, especially for models that have a source and destination model. It could be airlines, it could be shipping, it could be any sorts of scenarios. Because also the one thing I should mention is that these lines that you're drawing in between, they have value, and they're dynamically selected, and they have the aggregate values of that point connection. So you're not actually just seeing the connection between the two, but you're actually seeing the color coding of these lines here, and you get to see the value that they have. And so it's a good way to analyze that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove that filter. And in fact, I'm going to remove the entire layer here so we can move on to another analysis. And I'll remove that layer. And now we're back to our original set here. And I'm going to show you a couple other things with a more advanced point set here. I have a lot of customer points on here. So I'm just going to go in and choose the customer layer. And I'm going to show you a couple of these that I didn't show you before. The first one I'll show you is clustering. These are clustered points, and I'll make them very large so that you can see them well. And what it's doing is it's aggregating the points, but also with our aggregation engine, you can aggregate the metrics. And obviously as you zoom down, they're dynamic, so you'll see them split. And so as you zoom into an area, you get to see where the concentrations of customers are coming from without having to look at 100,000 points on an individual map. Another variation on that is if when I select in here is to show it by a heat map. And you'll see that it'll show me where the hot locations are. And you can also show, we also have what we call hotspotting, which is more literal. There's no contouring associated with the data at all. It just shows you an exact representation of what's hot and what's not. And then also we do things like these pie distributions, so that you can see the category not only of how many customers are in an area, but what is the breakdown of the type of customer in the area. And getting into more category style analysis is something that BI people do, and not necessarily always GIS people do. And so this is another differentiator for us in terms of how exactly do we choose to show our data so that we get the most value from it. All right, I'm going to switch back over to my point layer here, and we're going to go ahead and do one final item here, which is I'm going to go ahead and add more data to this, and I'm going to select date and put it at the top. Now, Lumira is going to take a second here to reprocess the data grid for us and let it build a map again of these customer locations by date. And so you're going to get a lot of repeated customer dates, customer locations, because again, we have one for each date, and so it multiplies your data set. Now, what's interesting here is that you automatically now see a movie icon. This is another big differentiator for Visual Crossing. When we recognize that you've put a date value, a date time value onto your data set, it will take and automatically, because again it creates these repeated sets that overlap each other, it will segment them into individual frames of date so that you can show this as an animation. And it brings up the animation window. If I just show it like this, you basically see points blinking all over the place, and so it's probably not the optimal way to view that because you can't gather it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my tool here again, look at the heat map version of that. And with the heat map, it's a little bit of a different story now, so I can actually see where the changes are. And then also, if I don't want it to behave quite so fast, I can actually slow it down with the movie controls itself. And so I'll go ahead and click play again. And now you get to see how the performance changes over time for your data set. And this is completely invaluable for our customers because this is an easy way to consume a lot of data. If you were to look at this over the course of 300 days, you're going to look at 300 different frames of it and not really understand the data, or even if you grid sort it, it's not going to help. But looking at a visualization like this, it immediately tells you what time of year, did I enter a promotion in a certain area and did people respond to it? All sorts of good information that you can get from this. And of course, at any point in time, you can stop the movie, you can zoom down into an area and find out a little bit more about the microgeographic side of it. Is there a specific area in the city that's responding to this campaign? How do I repeat it? Who are they? Maybe select the points out of there and create a promotion list. But anything that you need to do here to pull the data out and gather value from it, the system allows you to do that. And so we go ahead and try to make this as easy as possible, again, from the BI side. You don't have to set up a special map or anything of the sorts. You basically add the data set and add it to the data set and you're ready to go. And we also support what we call the true timeline analysis. And timeline analysis is different than a lot of animations you'll see by map providers. Sometimes they'll just do steps. You provide them a grid of data and each row has a date. They'll show you date 1, date 2, and they don't care about the actual time sequence. They're just showing you the steps. What Visual Crossing does is it takes those steps and overlays them on an actual timeline. And that timeline will show you maybe there's a lag period between the two purchases. Instead of just showing you 1, 2, show you 1 lag, second purchase. And so what that allows you to do is not only show a more realistic version, but it allows you also to connect to other data sets. And so let's say your data set here is related to weather in some way, and so you bring in a weather, the temperature data for weather over the last same 300 days. Well, now they have to sync up on the same timeline. And did a fluctuation in temperature change the value and location? And so that's very important that, especially from an animation perspective, that you can handle these timeline sources. We have several videos up on our YouTube channel already. Just go to YouTube and search for Visual Crossing and see our channel. There's animations of taxi cab locations as well as several others that if you want to get a feel for what you can do. There's some advanced features in there like tail ghosting to show you where you were and then where you are, and all sorts of nice features on the animation side. So it's another big differentiator for us, not only being able to handle the scalability of those larger data sets, but also being able to then animate them on a true timeline. All right. So that's pretty much the demo that I wanted to be able to show you here today. There's still a lot more, there's search functionality and more advanced filtering and things that we'd love to show you. Obviously, we're just, this is just an initial webinar. If you want any additional information, obviously, you can always contact us and ask us, what our functionality capabilities are for a specific feature maybe that you're looking for. But this should give you a pretty good overview so far. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and open up for questions on both the chat side as well as on the in the other areas. So if you have a question, you could feel free to unmute and ask your questions, or you can go ahead and type into the chat window any questions that you might have. I'll give you guys just a couple minutes here if you need to think of some questions. All right, the first question came in from chat here, and it's effectively asking us what data do we provide here. And so it's a good question. With the Lumira, the plugin, the extension that we offer, we are providing geopolitical boundaries. In this case, we're showing zip codes, but we also provide others in Germany and Brazil and many of the European areas as well. You can likewise, if you have custom areas that you want to load into it, our team basically will help you recompile that plugin for your distribution on your site with only the data that you need in it. So if you look at that and you look at our data set and say that's not enough, or if you need more, that is certainly doable. All right. The next question is to find out more about the drive time functionality. So drive time is an interesting one. I touched on it lightly in the presentation. It does require an external server to be set up. Again, the data set that creates drive time is pretty massive, and it needs to be managed by a server process. And so what you'll see is when you're connected to a drive time server, and we go into that location info window again, you'll see a drive time option. You just select the drive time, you select the precision you want for the drive time. You can do both drive distance as well as drive time, and then you can go ahead and you'll be able to see them. There's nothing tricky about it. Again, it's just you do need that team connection or server connection in order to be able to process that type of data. Next question is, what BI tools do we support? So we originally were on MicroStrategy. We also support the SAP Lumira, and we also support Design Studio now. And so those are the three primaries. We do have other customers who use it as a standalone GIS tool as well, or they'll do custom dev on it. One of the things we didn't cover in here was that all of this is based on a JavaScript API, a very powerful one. And it's, again, it's fully HTML5 enabled and ready to go if you want to develop a custom solution on it as well. So you can integrate it into your own internal system, or you can use one of our current BI integrations. All right, we're getting a few more in here. So the first one is, what representation of data do we support? So typically what we do is we work with shapefiles and we can import them. Our internalized system is GeoJSON, and you could also feed into the map a GeoJSON data set directly, just as you would lat long, and process the map immediately. So the primary internal representation is GeoJSON, but we do support other vector types like shapefiles and that you can drop into the system, and it will interpret those into the GeoJSON that we use. So it's we basically support quite a bit of that. All right, next question is a question about address geocoding as well as options for things like Street View and Google Access. So we did mention that inside of the base maps, you can choose Google as a base map if you have a subscription for it. We do offer more affordable subscriptions as a Google reseller, and and smaller in size, maybe for teams, and make it affordable. That comes with Google Street View, and yes, you can click on a point and ask to see the Street View version of it. It pops up as a separate window. That is available today. And then, yes, you can also use both our OpenStreetMap data set as well as the Google data set or the Bing data set for address geocoding. So if you don't have lat longs yet and you need to create them from addresses, we can help you with that. Our team is fairly experienced in doing this for both large and small customers. All right, the next question is, do we require services on our product, or do we offer them? And the answer to that is yes, we do provide services. We have a services group that's dedicated to helping you with any aspect you want. It could be training, it could be installation, or it could be installation through implementation, or full ownership of a project. That is available. Obviously, most of our customers, because of ease of use, have choose to do a lot of this themselves. It's certainly not required by any means, and you don't need anything. Like what I showed you here today, again, it was just dropping in an extension, you register it, and you load your data sets and go. And so there's not much more to it than that. We try to make it as easy as possible. Obviously, there's some enterprise systems that get very complex about how their systems work, and you have to make accommodations for that. But primarily, it's meant to be a drop-and-go plugin, and we try to price it that way as well as make it simple from a technology perspective. Okay. Any more questions here? All right. Do we support mobile? Yes, the answer is yes. We do have a mobile product. It's again, it's built from the same code base as the web one. So everything we demoed here is also available in mobile. The only limitations you have is that the mobile device is probably not as fast and not as much memory available as you would on your desktop, but everything else is basically equal in functionality because it was written with that single code base again. And also on mobile as well, as this is pure HTML5. So if you want to do web-based access on mobile rather than have it using our mobile app, you can also do that as well. So that's another option. All right, I'll give you guys just another minute here to see if any questions trickle in. We have 4 minutes left in our webinar, and so if you have any, just go ahead and add them to the chat window if you want. All right, I think the questions are pretty much exhausted here at this point. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. If you look at my screen right now, you'd see the link. If you haven't tried it already, you should go ahead and copy down. I'll leave this URL up for a few minutes here, and you can go ahead and you can contact me directly if you want help or you have any questions. But you can just go to the sign up page and get the eval copy and try it yourself. And During any of our evals, you also get free technical support from our team. And so you have any questions during that period, just email support@visualprocessing.com, and that's all described in the eval email that you'll get. But we try to make it as easy as possible for you to give this a try, and we certainly look forward to any feedback that you have or any enhancement requests. Anything along those lines, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help. So this ends the webinar, and thank you again for attending. If you have any questions, again, I'll leave this up and you can copy my email address down, or you can email support or info@visualprocessing.com for any general information. But feel free to reach out to us whenever you need us. All right, thank you all. Bye.